are now listening to the War Rapport Podcast Network.
The Oklahoma Sooners are looking really good in the beginning of their basketball season, taking down Oklahoma State and winning Bedlam. That's right, they won Bedlam. Let's talk about it here on the Sooner Spotlight. What's up, Sooner Nation, and welcome into another episode of Sooner Spotlight. I am your host, Josh Mahler. You can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter. That is at @RealJoshMahler. Go check me out over there for all updates on the show and so much more. And just a quick reminder, we are still running the giveaway. We have not ended the giveaway entries yet, so you can still go over there. The link will be down in the description to go over to my post. All you have to do is just show that you are subscribed to the channel and post that. And then if you repost, it's a little bit extra. If you add in there and mention something that you've been watching for however long, then let us know that you're a longtime listener, longtime watcher, however you consume this podcast. Let me know, because we are going to go through. I'm going to have someone pick the winner for me very soon. We have to get confirmation with the tickets. They're already purchased, just waiting for those ticket purchase authorization forms to come in, and everything will be good to go. So there's 2 free tickets that we will give away to the Armed Forces Bowl. Just go over there and enter into that giveaway, and that link down in the description. You do have to have an X account in order to do so. But go check that out for a chance to win 2 free tickets to the Armed Forces Bowl. It's going to be a fun time, so hopefully we can give those away very soon. The announcement for when we will be announcing the winners will be very soon as well. But let's get into it, because last night, Bedlam happened. That's right. Most Oklahoma fans thought that Bedlam was pretty much over when the Sooners left the Big 12 to go over to the SEC. And while that's partially true, it wasn't true last night, because they brought it back in basketball. And, it's not back in football just yet, but it's back in basketball. At least last night it was. And the Oklahoma Sooners took it. It was a really cool atmosphere at Paycom Center in Oklahoma City. Just the overall environment felt really cool. It was split down the middle, much like the Red River rivalry, which kind of made it kind of fun, split down the middle right at half court. So that was pretty cool. And the Oklahoma Sooners, with this win, now improve to 10-0. I mean, that's an amazing start to the beginning of their season, and we're really excited for the Oklahoma Sooners going forward. It seems like Porter Moser has a team that really seems to be clicking more. I know this is the second year in a row now that they've been up to 10-0, but this team does feel a lot different, and we'll get to that. But Oklahoma, they shot nearly 50% from the field last night, which is better than their overall average on the season so far by a couple of percentage points. So that was something that was really good, and you love to see them shooting at a high clip. And being able to get that ball around to several scorers was one thing that was really big last night. With that 50%, they drained 8 three-pointers from behind the line, which was awesome. 5 of them from Kobe Elvis. That was a big game for him, shooting 5 of 8 for 3-point land, which was really cool to be able to add an extra shooter out there for the Sooners, being able to get him out there and get him in a rhythm. And, he fired off, and he was going off very much last night. And it just felt like Oklahoma State never really tried to guard him up close behind the line, which was fine with us. And one of the biggest improvements was not really trying to force anything for the Sooners, instead just letting it happen, letting it come naturally. And it was an amazing time watching the Sooners go out there on the hardwood and put up a big-time win. And against a rival like that, Sam Godwin shot an incredible 10 of 14 from the field and was just outstanding, 71%. That's really good in any level of basketball, but in a high-level college basketball like this, and D1, that's an amazing run for him. And I know a lot of them were quote-unquote easy shots because he was dunking quite a bit last night. I didn't put together how many dunks, but I know that I basically stopped counting. He had a ton of dunks and just a lot of pick and roll efficiency with Sam Godwin in there, which is something that we talked about prior to the season starting. We needed those bigs to really get going. And when Sam Godwin was banged up last year, it felt like we didn't have anyone else to replace him. This year, it feels like we've got a lot more bigs. And, it feels like Sam Godwin has really gotten into a really good rhythm here recently and early in the season, which is amazing. So we love to see that from him. And because of his performance, Coach Moser actually gave him the Bedlam trophy to stay with him once again, which is totally awesome. He posted on social media that it's right back where it belongs, right on his mantle, right above the fireplace. So Sam Godwin, huge night last night for him, 20 points, shooting a 71% clip is outstanding. And then 14 rebounds on top of that. So that's an amazing night for Sam Godwin. You love to see it for the guy that stuck around one more year with the Sooners. This is a guy that we know quite a bit about from last year. So really awesome to see him have the kind of game that he did. And, when it comes to Oklahoma State, it really felt like they did all they could to shut down Jalen Moore, who's been the Oklahoma Sooners' leading scorer this far into the season, and he's been one of those guys that you can't let him get hot. And so Oklahoma State did everything they could to keep him quiet, and I think they did a pretty good job overall because he didn't really have a great night shooting, but he still got 11 points. And then on top of that, we saw several other players, specifically in the starting five, really step up last night, which was really awesome. You had all starting five players. They all were able to score with double digits. So 10 or more points from every single one of the starting five. That's something that's really tough to do. And that was something that happened last night. And it just seemed like it came very easy for the Sooners. And there really was no part of this game where it felt like Oklahoma State was going to start to gain momentum to come back, and they were able to keep them down nonstop. With the starting five, you had Godwin with 20 points that we just mentioned, and of course, Kobe Elvis with 15 points that we just mentioned a moment ago, all from three-point range. But then you also had Jeremiah Fears with 17 and 5 assists, and then Duke Miles with 10. And we just now mentioned Jalen Moore having 11 points as well. So with all 5 starters getting that double digits last night, that felt like a really good offensive rhythm, something that we just want something like that to feel natural for each of these guys to be able to score. And it was happening last night. Really good to see the offense, specifically with that starting five, rolling so well. And, the bench came in and they didn't do a whole lot. They didn't really produce a whole lot in terms of points. But overall, they came in and filled their roles just fine, and ultimately there was never a doubt that Oklahoma was going to win this. Even when those bench players came in, they were still doing quite a bit. We saw quite a bit from Dayton Forsythe, which was awesome to see him out on the court and doing some good things. Loved to see what he was able to do. He had some really cool dimes down, specifically in that pick and roll, again, down to Godwin and some of those bigs down low. And so, the fact that he was able to come in with just very few minutes and be able to do something, even though it may not have been putting up any kind of big-time scores or anything like that, still saw a little bit out of him and several others from the bench that just filled in their role and did what they needed to do. And obviously, it's not like we really needed them to do much because Oklahoma ended up dominating by 15 points here in Bedlam. And when you come to Oklahoma's defense and look at what that defense was able to do, that's what really surprises me about this team overall, because this defense, they were suffocating all night long. And even though it felt like the refs at times, and Porter Moser was definitely one of those guys just infuriated with the refs, and rightfully so, because it seemed like they were missing a lot of traveling calls, and I don't know what that was. The commentators, even kind of on top of that, they mentioned maybe it's the lighting or something, and the refs aren't seeing that properly. Whatever it is, they need to be watching their feet, and they were right, because it just felt like nonstop there was traveling calls that weren't being called. There was, I know, a couple of times where a turnover happened, and it would have turned into a breakaway, but instead Oklahoma State fouls, and somehow that doesn't get called. And that's what happened with some of our turnovers, because we did turn the ball over 12 times, still won the turnover battle. Oklahoma won the turnover battle 12-16, which is really good. Anytime that you're able to have really less than 15 turnovers in a game, you're feeling pretty good. So you're right up there towards that mark. You'd like to cut that down to maybe 8 by the time you get to, some tougher opponents, which Michigan coming up, and whenever you get into SEC play, you definitely want to be turning the ball over much less. So if you can keep that right under double digits, somewhere in there, that would be much better. But still, 12 is feeling like a pretty good game overall, especially in a chippy battle the way that this Bedlam game was. And it really felt like Oklahoma State was never able to get into rhythm. At one point, they were scrambling and trying to find answers and put multiple guards out on the court, trying to find something, see if they could get speed to get around some of the bigs down low, and that wasn't happening. Sam Godwin played a really good game down low, played very clean game too. I believe he only had 3 fouls, and so he wasn't really into that foul trouble much at all for the most of the night. So really good to see the bigs playing and that defense playing as hard as they did. And they kept Oklahoma State to just 27% from the field overall last night. It was a really good game from them. They came out there and they shut them down scoring. They were able to be quick and efficient on offense, not forcing anything where it doesn't need to be forced. And it was really good. There was several times that I saw Oklahoma State players kind of running into each other and getting kind of miscommunication on some of their motions. And there was a lot of that. And a lot of that was because Oklahoma was just so suffocating on defense, playing with enough of a cushion to make them feel comfortable and then be able to press whenever it mattered the most. And I thought they did a really good job. Like I said, 16 turnovers, being able to get that thing back 16 times. And I felt like a few times it even was kind of taken away from Oklahoma, where maybe something wasn't called or maybe something was called when it shouldn't have been. And it didn't feel like the refs were turning the point of the game or anything like that. It wasn't like they were kind of changing the outcome of the game whatsoever. But it just felt like it was unfair the way that they were calling, and not just from Oklahoma's standpoint. I think both sides. I felt like they were just missing a lot of stuff in general, which does kind of hurt the flow of the game. I think they were calling some things that shouldn't have been called, both sides, and so that was something that it's just a bummer when you get into those situations. No excuses for either side, and obviously Oklahoma did really well. One thing I think that Oklahoma needs to do better at is, I think at the charity stripe, that's what I saw that I was watching, and I felt like they just weren't really performing very well at the charity stripe. They did shoot a 63% as a team. I would like to see that in the mid-70s. And not just the misses, because if you miss, that's 1 point, and that doesn't really feel like a whole lot, but many of those misses came on those one-on-one opportunities. And when you miss on that first one-on-one opportunity, you just now missed 2 points. So that was something that you've got to at least be able to hit that first one. You miss a second one, you're only missing out on 1 point rather than 2. And so it didn't really hurt Oklahoma here, but that could really hurt further on in the season, especially when you get into conference play and some of these tougher opponents that are lined up further down the schedule. So that's something that I think you've got to pay attention to. You can't be missing 2 points on a free throw, so it's You've got to be careful, and that's something that I think they need to work on. And I don't know if it was just the environment. I don't know if maybe the new court was a little different. I've heard that the feel of different courts, whenever you go from one court to the next, specifically into the NBA, I've heard that sometimes that feels a little different. That's not really much of an excuse, though. You've got to shoot better than 63%. And like I said, missing 7 is not just 7 points. Some of that was from those one-on-one chances. So you've got to be able to do better there. But ultimately, I felt like this was a very well performed overall game from Oklahoma, both on offense and defense, being able to outscore by 15 points, putting up 80 points, and holding a very high-scoring Oklahoma State offense to only 65. That was very impressive. And like I said, being able to confuse them and force them to kind of scramble, trying to figure something out on offense was something that you love to see from the Sooners on defense. The next game they've got is Michigan in the Jumpman Invitational. That's in Charlotte, North Carolina at Spectrum Center. This may be the toughest matchup to date that the Oklahoma Sooners are going to have. So it's going to be very interesting. I'm loving the matchup. I love these bigger games. I personally like seeing Oklahoma go against tougher opponents because so far they've been performing really well, even against some of the tougher opponents on their schedule this far. I think Michigan is going to be the toughest opponent up to this point. I think Oklahoma State would have been that toughest opponent, mainly because of the rivalry, but even backing up and beating Louisville and some of the teams coming out of Hawaii with hardware, that was really good to be able to come out of that. But now going to Charlotte, North Carolina, if you remember last season, that's kind of when things started not to go the way that they wanted for the Oklahoma Sooners whenever they lost to North Carolina there. So this will be very interesting. I think this will be the toughest matchup to date. And it's going to be very, very telling about how how much the Sooners really are prepared to going forward into SEC play and going forward into some of these other games that we've got lined up on the schedule. I want to hear from you guys. How do you feel about the Sooners starting off at 10-0 so far, this far into the season? Hey Sooner fans, did you enjoy this video? Well, go ahead and hit that like button and go ahead and hit that subscribe button. What are you doing if you've made it this far and haven't already? You should be able to find that subscribe button over here. And then if you want to see full episodes, we've got those up here and clips right down here. So go check that out. But we thank you all so much for all the love, all the support. We'll catch you next time. Boomer.